Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Constantine the Third here, and for the next couple of episodes, we're going to be focusing all on items. When to buy them, what to buy, what they do, when they're good, when they're not good, whatever. So, like I said in the other video I was talking about digitizing my Vayne guide, we're going to start off with this first layer. Very simple, very basic stuff, not get too deep, but in the next episode or two, we're going to get really into the grassroots of how everything functions. So, let's just get started with the bare bones basics and talk about everything that a total noob Vayne would need to know. And even if you're a veteran at playing Vayne, it's always worth it to review the basics, trust me. Sometimes there are some things that you just forget. So, without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so again, total noob status. Let's quickly go through every single stat that you will be purchasing on Vayne, what they do, and why they're good. The first stat we're going to talk about is attack damage. Whenever a champion right-clicks or A left-clicks on a champion in League of Legends, you fire what's called their auto-attack. It's their basic attack that just deals your total amount of attack damage to a target. The more attack damage you have, the more damage this right-click or A left-click auto-attack will deal. This is important on Vayne because Vayne does her damage by auto-attacking people, not by using abilities or anything else. Next up on the list, we have attack speed. Attack speed is how often you fire off your auto attack. If you look at the thing on the screen, it has a number next to it. That number is between 0 and 2.5 on any champion besides Kog'Maw. This number is how often you fire per second, so if the number is 1.5, that means for every 1 second that passes while you right-click on an enemy, you will fire an auto attack 1.5 times. Typically between Vayne, when you're a full build, you're anywhere between 1.5 and 2.0 attack speed, somewhere in that range. I really don't know. Sorry. Next up, we're going to talk about Critical Strike. Critical Strike isn't a stat like attack damage or attack speed. It's not a number. It's a percentage chance. It's somewhere between 0 and 100. Basically, every time you fire an auto attack, the game will look at what percentage you have to land a Critical Strike, and if you roll right and you get lucky, you will land a Critical Strike. What does a Critical Strike do? It deals double your attack damage. It's really nice. Next. The next stat we're going to talk about is Lifesteal. Lifesteal is either a percentage or a flat amount of health to get back on hit, but we're going to focus on the percentage type because that's all that we build on Vayne. Lifesteal is really simple. Anytime you deal damage to an enemy, for whatever percent lifesteal you have, you'll gain that amount of health back. So if you deal 100 damage and you have 10% lifesteal, you'll gain back 10 health. Next up, we have movement speed. Movement speed is how fast your character moves. That's, yeah. Next, we have armor penetration. Armor penetration is really complicated. There's flat and percentage armor pen. Just because you're a total noob, this is all you need to know. The more armor pen you have, the more armor you penetrate from your enemies. Penetrate. Armor is a stat that reduces the amount of physical damage you do to a target. So if you have 100 armor, it's going to reduce the amount of damage they receive from physical damage by a flat percentage. If an enemy has too much armor, you're pretty much going to do no damage to them as an attack damage carry, so it's important to build armor penetration. Next, finally we have defensive stats like armor and magic resistance. Don't build these suck! Done! We did it. Now let's talk about items, but much slower, and yeah. Okay, so there are a lot of ways that you can build an ADC like Vayne. There's the Bork Rush, there's the Ghostblade Rush, hell, there's even a Trinity Force build floating out there right now. But, for our purposes, and since this is the first video, I'm going to go with telling you guys that pretty much every single game you need to build a Blade of the Ruined King. Why do you build a Blade of the Ruined King on Vayne every single game pretty much? Well, it's just a really strong item universally. For starters, it gives you both attack damage and attack speed, and since Vayne does a lot of damage with their W, True Silver Bolts, you want to have attack speed early on, and pretty much a lot of it in your build. Since every time you pop True Silver Bolts when it's level 5, it deals 12.5% of the enemy's maximum health. That is a shit ton of damage against a tank, which is pretty much what you're going to be hitting, but we're obviously going to talk about that later. Also, Blade of the Ruined King gives you lifesteal. That is really nice because Vayne isn't very strong in lane because she has really low attack damage, and all of her damage is done by having items, and obviously in the early game you don't have items. So this is going to help you limp through the laning phase until you can get out of there. Again, Ghostblade's a really good build on Vayne, but the issue is that you kind of have to know what you're doing when you're using it and like how to trade and stuff, and if you're new to Vayne, you probably shouldn't be doing that until you know how to trade with lifesteal. And then you can upgrade to Ghostblade. Also, if his items activate means that it's really good for dueling people, which Vayne is really, really good at. So pretty much this item is great because if you're not super good at playing Vayne yet, it just makes her strengths really pronounced so you can kind of learn them faster, and it also ends up covering up her weaknesses as well. Also, the passive on it lets you do current health damage, which is really nice again against tanks. And this, when you're new to Vayne, you just need to train yourself to not dive past the front line and always try to kill that really quickly. And again, once you get better, we can evolve to more complex strategies, but for now, let's keep it simple. We obviously always go Berserker's Greaves, because that's like the best boots for an ADC. And there are like swiftness builds out there, but it's not really that good because, to not get into too much detail, movement speed has a soft cap on it, so whenever Vayne has her passive activated, the bonus movement speed from Swifty's boots pretty much gets negated to almost nothing, so it's not worth building. And yeah, more attack speed means more damage. So let's move on to the second item. So there's like a lot of really different ways you can choose to look at this second item. Now, for every single Vayne build, regardless of anything, it's always going to be a Zeal item. In the game, currently, there are 3 items that are building out of Zeal. There's the Phantom Dancer, there's the Static Shiv, and there's the Rapid Fire Cannon. Now, all 3 of these choices are viable, but in about 70% of games, it's the best idea to build a Phantom Dancer. Phantom Dancer just gives you a shit ton of attack speed and critical strike, which is really good for Vayne, because Vayne likes doing both of those things. Static Shiv and Rapid Fire Cannon are again good choices, but only in certain situations, and let's not overwhelm ourselves here. Let's just, again, keep it very simple. So why is Phantom Dancer good? Again, tons of attack speed means tons of Silver Bolts procs and tons of extra damage from Blade of the Ruined King. Remember that passive I told you about earlier that does current health damage? Well, attack speed lets us activate that current health damage more since it's what's called an on-hit effect, meaning that every time you auto-attack someone, it's triggered. So yeah, Phantom Dancer boosts our Bork damage a lot. Also, the critical strike scales really well into our third item, which is going to be something we'll talk about in a second. But here's the thing about Phantom Dancer. Not only does it have great scaling into the late game and synergy with your kit and Blade of the Ruined King, it also has 2 very potent and unique passives on them. And I mean both the unique passives and it can only be active once, and the fact that you really can't find these passives anywhere else in the game. The first pass I want to talk to you guys about is Spectral Waltz, which is actually the exact same thing as Vayne's passive. But here's the thing, it's a percentage movement speed boost, so it actually stacks with Vayne's passive already, meaning that you get insane movement speed boost while hunting down enemies when your ultimate is up. And the second passive is something called Lament. It's a little bit confusing, so let's word it very simply here. Whenever you have a Phantom Dancer and you auto-attack an enemy champion, that enemy champion that you just auto-attacked will deal 12% less damage to you. So I'm going to use an actual example here. In this clip that I'm showing on the screen right now, I auto-attack an Echo while kiting him away from a team fight. If Echo were to hit me, he doesn't because I kite his ass to death, but if he were to hit me, he would deal 12% less damage to me. This is really nice because if you're having trouble with someone like a Zed, a Rengar, an Aurelia, an Echo, somebody who dives you, this will actually give you effectively 12% more health when you're fighting against them and makes you last longer and gives you time to regain the lost health from your lifesteal on Blade of the Ruined King. So overall, it's a great item for dueling, chasing, kiting, pretty much everything you need, so that's why you get it in most games. There are situations where Rapid Fire Cannon and Static Shiv are superior choices, and we'll go into those later in the next video. But for now, pretty much just know, almost every game, you're going to pick up a Phantom Dancer, because it's just so damn potent on Vayne. So yeah, it's a good item. Let's talk about the third one. Now, this is kind of a confusing choice and the only one I'm going to throw in here for now, but basically there is an item in the game called Quicksilver Sash. That one lets you break anything termed hard CC. So a stun, a root, a fear, something that makes your character unable to move. Now, Quicksilver Sash will, once, remove all of those debuffs from you. Now, you need to look at the enemy team and think if this is going to be useful. If they have, like, 2 or more of those, then I would buy a Quicksilver Sash. But if you don't need it, or after you finish this item, you need to build this item called an Infinity Edge. Now, an Infinity Edge is the super late game 3-shot enemies item. It gives you a ton of extra attack damage, and it makes your critical strikes hit for 2.5 times the normal damage rather than just double. So yeah, it's only a good item when you already have a lot of attack damage and a lot of critical strike. And oh look, what did the first 2 items in our build give us? Attack damage and critical strike. So we are ready to build this bad boy. Now, when you build this thing, you are really, really, really strong. It's what's called a 3-item power spike. More on this later. But basically, no, once you buy this third item, the Infinity Edge, you're ready to fuck shit up. And yeah, so that's what's called your core item set. Basically, there really isn't a game when you wouldn't build these 3 items, right? Unless we were talking about the tweaks we talked about earlier, but like this standard Bork / Ghostblade into Zeal item into IE are pretty much what you build every single game. We'll talk about when you should build Ghostblade and or the other Zeal items in Layer 2. Okay, but for now, that's the core. So after that, there are a bunch of other really good choices that you can get. You can pick up something like a Bloodthirster, a Guardian Angel's armor, a Mercurial Scimitar, a Lord Dominic's Regards, maybe another attack speed item. There's a lot of choices, but for now, just know that that's your core, and I would just really get down being comfortable with that. Usually you don't need to buy 5th and 6th items, games don't usually last that long, but just understand that if you have a hard time killing tanks, you should buy a Lord Dominic's Regards. If you need to break hard CC, you need to buy the Mercurial Scimitar. If you're just getting one shot, you need to buy a Guardian Angel's armor. And if you need more lifesteal for some reason, you buy a Bloodthirster. And yeah, that'll be it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this first layer. The second one's coming out sometime really soon. And for that episode, we're going to talk about whether you should go Bork or Ghostblade, which is a really important decision. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope this helped you out. And yeah, I'll see you sometime soon.